This podcast explores health, wellness, and disability topics and may include sensitive content. Views expressed are personal and for general information only, not professional advice. Please seek guidance from qualified professionals as needed. Alt text description of featured author. Amanda Leduc, author of Wild Life, is a Canadian author and disability activist who lives with cerebral palsies. Leduc is also known for her books Disfigured, On Fairy Tales, Disabilities, and Making Space, and The Censura's Wife. Amanda Leduc is a Caucasian woman with long, curly, blondish-brown hair. In her headshot, she is wearing a bright green shirt and a long beige sweater. She stands against a tree with a lush green forest behind her. She smiles almost mischievously, her nose crinkling as her expression brightens towards her brown eyes.
This is Michelle Samos from FTKWellness. I'm speaking with Amanda Leduc, who is an advocate, I would say, for disabilities, whether visible or invisible, and you're also an author.
Yes.
And you've worked for the Fold as well.
I have, yes.
I've taken a couple of your workshops, and I just wanted to continue the conversation on disability in the arts.
Yes.
And we were talking about overcoming the disabilities when you're creating. Like, I find that it's very embarrassing when your health can't keep up.
Yes.
When you're dealing with brain fog.
Yeah.
When your condition is impacting you. And I know you've shared it in one of your workshops, but I wanted to be able to get it on our recordings. Just how do you manage your disability where you're trying to create and you're trying to be able to complete your work and you're not able to complete it, whether it's to your publishers, grants, etc.? How do you manage that emotionally?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the great lessons that my disability has given me is the acknowledgement that I can't hold everything in the air at the same time. I can't juggle a whole bunch of different balls at the same time. And it's actually okay to let some of them go because things have a way of working out. And I know that comes certainly with a certain degree of privilege, I think. I've managed to create a lot of relationships in my arts relationship with my publisher, with other entities, and there's a lot of trust there. So if I have to let, for example, a publishing deadline as a ball, I have to let that drop. There is space and warmth and leeway for that to happen, and it can be reworked and we can find a solution to the issue. And I know that's not something that is available to everybody. But what I have found is that the capacity for that is there, even if the structures that we have in place currently don't allow it. And so being open about that need, both for myself and then for other people, and acknowledging that in my own life, I have to let some things go in order for other things to flourish at times. And sometimes that means, as I say, dropping the ball, but I do find that life comes around and I can pick it up at a later date. So recognizing that not everything needs to be done all at once, and that creating a world where we can shift these deadlines, we can shift these expectations so that people are happy and healthy and able to really work to their full potential allows for both those net deadlines and all of those milestones in art to be created in the fullness of what they're meant to be, right? It's better to let go of the deadline and allow your project and allow you as an artist to flourish and really come at something from a space of rest and wellness and still get to that finish line, as it were, just maybe at a later point, than it is to stick to the absolute deadline, half-ass it to the finish line almost, really, and let so many other things fall in the process of that. Your well-being, your mental status, your heart as a creator. I would rather stay true to that, stay true to the integrity of that, than put the physicality of deadlines and keeping on in the rat race, if you will. I would rather let that go and let everything else about who I am as a person, my soul, I would rather let that flourish. And that's not a lesson I think I would have learned had it not been for disability. So I'm really grateful for that lesson and for the way that it has enacted itself in my own life.
If you don't mind me asking, how long did it take for you to learn that lesson? Because we all had to go through, I call it the mourning period of trying to figure that out. And, that it's okay that we have our journey, but like, what was it your experience in regards to coming to this understanding?
I started to learn that lesson, I would say, really, truly for the first time in my mid-30s. And I didn't really kind of come full circle. And I say that, with a caveat, I'm still learning. Yeah. I think we're all still learning. I'm 43 now. And I would say that the lesson really kind of settled when I turned 40. So, I mean, really, it's been 40 years of learning and working that lesson through my body in particular ways. And there are going to be other ways that lesson starts cropping up, right? Like I have come to an equilibrium in my own life with my disability and my work and knowing what I'm capable of. But my body is always changing and my capacity for things is always changing. So I am quite sure that I'm going to have to learn that lesson again anew in the future.
Right. One last question. Having an invisible disability, because I would look at you and think, oh, everything is fine, unless I had heard your story. Having an invisible disability and entering the field of work as a writer, as a creator, how did you find people that approached you and understood you within your circumstance? How did you have to maneuver helping them to understand the limitations?
Yeah. It's always so interesting, right? Because my disability, you're right, it is invisible in some ways. And then also, if I'm at the end of the day and I'm very fatigued, I do have a visible limp and it becomes quite a little bit more, well, not a little bit, it becomes quite more prominent. The later in the day I go, the more tired I am, the more things that have impacted me. If I'm wearing inappropriate shoes, it's very obvious. And I think one of the things that's been interesting is that when I first talked to people about having a disability, the reaction would be, oh, surprise. Like, oh, you never would have struck me as someone who's disabled. And I really started to interrogate in my own life and then encourage other people to interrogate in themselves. Like, think about where your brain goes when that's your first reaction, right? Oh, I never would have thought you had a disability. Why is that? Is that because you picture disability as occupying a very specific space? You picture it as someone who has a visible need from others inside. What does that mean? What is the story that you're telling yourself as a result of having that picture in your head, right? And it's an interrogation, as I said, that I have to do in my own life too, because when I think about invisible versus visible disabilities, it's definitely something when I started doing this work, I really wanted to not take up a lot of space because I was like, I can get into a lot of spaces that other disabled people can't. I would rather allow them the opportunity to speak. And it was actually through working with JL at the Fold that she really encouraged me to, remember what it means to be able to get into these spaces that sometimes people can't get into and be the one who is up there in front of the crowd saying, look, everyone, I'm here to remind you that not everybody who wants to be here can be here in this space. So there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that privilege, you might say, of invisible disability. And also a responsibility on the other end too, where people make assumptions about disability that it looks a certain way. And we forget that people who may not visibly look like they have certain needs do still have those needs, and those needs still deserve to be met. So there are multiple ways that occupying this sort of liminal space of like sometimes visibly disabled and sometimes not, there are lots of different ways it can go. So I just always try to be aware of those various different ways that things can go and just be mindful and continuously humble about the responsibilities that we all have to keep talking about these kinds of things and remembering that, to always be asking who is missing in this space, who is not allowed as such to be in space, whether it's physically inaccessible or inaccessible in other ways, and really use that question and that method of interrogating the world as a way to push us forward into a newer, brighter, better world for us all.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time. You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To have your voice heard on Freedom to Know Wellness, email us at info@freedomtoknowwellness.ca. For content like this and more, subscribe to the Freedom to Know Wellness blog at freedomtoknowwellness@substack.com. And for more podcasts, Follow our FTK Wellness YouTube channel and find Freedom to Know Wellness on all major podcast platforms. And don't forget us on social media at FTK Wellness.